The step in the process that we're doing right now is to line up your selvages, and this is so we can make sure that our fabric grain lines, the lengthwise grains, are lined up so that when we lay out our pattern pieces, everything is on the straight of grain. So what we have to do is we have to take our big piece of fabric, and you're just going to fold it in half so that the selvages down here are matching, and then you just take your iron and you press the crease over to the left side or to the opposite side, so you're focused on the selvage. Your end down here may not be matching completely. That's your cut edge. What we want to focus on right now is making sure that the selvages match. So from selvages over to a crease. That's the first step. Make sure you do that to the whole entire length of your piece of fabric from cut end to cut end. All right, so you've already ironed your selvages and aligned those up. So now you have the selvage edge over here on this edge, and then the folded edge running along here, and they should be parallel. What you're gonna do next is you're gonna take all of your pattern pieces out of your pattern envelope, and if you need to iron them to keep them flat, since they've been all wrinkled up in there, you can just press them with an iron. Then you are going to go to your instruction packet that has been printed and shared with you on Canvas, and you are going to see that we're doing view A right here, and you are going to be following the instructions down here for a 60-inch wide fabric, because that's what we're using today. We're just using this muslin it's actually about 58 inches wide, but we'll follow this guideline. If you were using like a quilting cotton, those usually are 44-inch wide, 44 to 45. You would use these potential layouts for that depending on the size that you're doing, okay? So this is laid out according to what this set of instructions shows me. Notice that it has my pattern pieces. They are dotted, so that means the pattern piece 1 and 2 are going to be flipped over, so the pattern piece itself is facing the wrong side. We have the fold line over here. This pattern piece 2 is going to have a seam going down the back and the zipper, so you're going to be cutting 2 separate pieces on that one. And then the facings, this one is going to be, piece 4 is the front facing. It needs to be cut with the pattern piece right side up on the fold, and then piece 5, they have it in the diagram laying over here, where it would be cut to not on the fold, okay? So this is what the instructions tell us to do, which is fine. Since we do only have so few pattern pieces, we have an opportunity here to save some fabric. So what I'm gonna have you do is you'll get to this point, and then we're gonna look at it a little bit differently of how else could we cut this out so we don't waste as much fabric. And you have started with a 1 yard piece of fabric here. So what you can do is depending on the size. Now some of your sizes, if they're a larger size, you may end up having to do it just like this. But if you have a small enough size, this is a size 10, I am able to just pull that pattern piece up. I want to keep my grain line parallel with the selvage, and then now this piece over here, I can still lay out, and I need to be able to cut through 2 layers, and I need to keep that line parallel to the selvage. So that's what I'm looking for. But now, it may not seem like that much, but I have a bigger piece of scrap left over than I would have the other way. So the other way I would have had 2 small scraps, and now I have 1 or 2 little bit bigger ones, okay? So from here, we will go into pinning and drawing in our pattern markings. All right, as I looked further at the layout, I realized it would probably be better to move pattern piece 5 down here, and then I have this one long piece across the bottom as a scrap. So what we're gonna do next is we're gonna get ready to pin. Before we do that, we have to measure to make sure that our pattern piece that is cutting 2 is going to be parallel to the selvage. So we have our grain line arrow. What we're gonna do is we're gonna take a tape measure. You take your tape measure and you put it on the line, and you're measuring from the line, the grain line, over to the selvage. And the number is gonna be different for each of you depending on how exactly you have your pieces laid out. but from my line over to the selvage, it is 5¼ inches. Down at the bottom, it is 5 1/8 of an inch, okay? So those are not exactly even with each other. What I am going to do is I am going to hold down the bottom part of the pattern piece, and I'm just going to slide the top edge of it just about 1/8 of an inch over to try to make them equal. So now I place it on the line. That's now 5 inches, and this is also 5 inches. So that is perfectly parallel to the selvage. Now your number may be different. It may not be 5 inches, but the goal is that whatever the measurement is from the line to the selvage is equal at the top of the line and the bottom of the line. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna carefully try to not shift the pattern piece around. I'm just going to put a pin down in at that point just to hold those pieces together. Okay, so from here on, I am going to begin pinning my pattern pieces in place. And the way we are going to do this is at the corners, we are going to go at a diagonal. Okay. And then along the sides, along the edges, we are going to pin to cut. So you have to imagine that I will have my shears right here going along. I don't want any pins sticking out where I would run into them. So what I refer to as pin to cut is where I go parallel to the edge. Okay, so my pin is in and out. What we don't want is just a pin like that, poked in. That's doing nothing. We need it to secure the pieces, all three to get all the layers together. Okay, so pin like that, and then at an angle for each of the corners. So I would continue to pin all the way around that. On the piece 1, I'll start out with a pin in the corner. Okay, and this is lined up right along the selvage, right along the fold. That's fold enough on me a little bit, but smooth that out. So I'd pin the corners, pin along the edge. Now this one, I'm not going to be cutting later. Okay, so technically on this edge, the folded edge, I could pin like that if I wanted to. But along the other pattern pieces, anywhere I'm going to be cutting, the pins need to put in parallel to the edge of the pattern piece, okay? So we just need to pin all 4 pieces in place. All of the pieces are now pinned in place. What I'm gonna do is I'm just going to rotate this just to make it easier for my posture and how I stand to get it cut. Okay, so what I have here is I have everything ready to cut. Now in class, you will have this checked by the instructor just to make sure everything is okay. But when you begin cutting, you should leave your piece that you're cutting out flat on a surface. So this is gonna help make sure that you cut everything out straight and smooth. You want to stand up over the item, and so we're not picking it up to cut it, we're laying it flat. See when I pick it up how some of it kind of drapes down? We want to leave it flat on the table. My shears are going to lay flat on the table next to it, so I just begin cutting right next to the pattern piece, even with the edge of the pattern piece. Now as I approach these notches, different people handle notches in different ways. What I am going to train you all to do in class is to always cut out away from the notches to cut around them. So we're not gonna cut straight to cut them off, and we're not gonna cut into them. What we're gonna do is we're gonna cut out. Now this is a double notch, so it has 2 notches. What I like to do then is just cut in at an angle, cut flat across the top. I call it a flat top mountain, okay? Rather than going in and out, in and out. So that is going to be a double notch. And then I will continue to cut just parallel to the edge of the pattern piece all the way down until my pattern piece is completely cut out. Okay. Now You want it to be whatever side you're most comfortable with cutting. So you may end up, like I'm doing, move this around a little bit just to make sure that it is more comfortable. It's not an awkward angle, so that you get the best results possible, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and just finish cutting this one piece out. So this one is cut loose from the bolt of the fabric, okay? And then all I need to do up here at the top is I need to continue cutting out along the top edge, and I have a dart up here, which we will deal with in just a minute. But it does go up at a slight angle, and then it angles back down slightly. That's pretty typical for a dart, okay? And then we have another notch here. So at the top, this is gonna show me where to attach my waistband piece later. I'm going to cut to the dart. This is just a single one, so it's just going to look, sorry, not dart, notch. It's just going to look like one triangle, okay? And then I'm gonna get under here and just cut straight to the edge. Okay, so now we have that piece completely cut out. We've got it on the fold, so it was placed on the fold, so we do not cut down here. We have our notch here. We are gonna deal with that in a second. We have the side edge cut out with the double notches right there. And so that is it. So that one we can set off to the side, and now we'll need to continue cutting out the other pieces. All right, so we have all of our pieces cut out. I've got piece 5, and it is cut to, not on the fold, so we measured the grain line and made sure it was parallel with the selvage, so I have 2 pieces there. This is piece 2. Piece 2 is the back, so you'll have a zipper running around the back, and so this was cut to, so this was also not on the fold. We did have 2 notches over on one side and then a triple notch over on the other side. Our other piece is part of the facing. This is for the front facing, and so it is one piece cut on the fold with a single notch. And then piece 1 was the piece that I cut out on film. We've got the single notch up top, you've got double notches over here. This is the front skirt, and then you've got your markings for the dart. So we've got those. Then I want you to look at this scrap that we have left over. You should have something that looks similar to this, and what I want you to do with it is I want you to find where the lowest point is right down here, and we're gonna trim this off. Basically what we're doing is we're squaring up our fabric. So we're going to get this long strip, okay? So this is gonna be your long strip. It should be have a fold, and then the selvage end, we're gonna fold that up, and I'll have you set that in one pile, and the rest of your pieces, you're going to cut them into squares or rectangles, probably more like rectangles, that are the perfect size to use as the scraps that I keep in the little scrap bin, okay? So you'll just cut them down to sizes like this and store them in the scrap bin up in the front room under the table. And pieces that are like small, like these little pieces here, those are the only things that you can throw away, okay? So if they are a usable size piece, like all this area right here could be trimmed into your rectangles, and then just maybe this little strip would be thrown away. So you'll want to take care of that in class. Don't just let this pile up. It's just manage your own scraps so then I don't have to manage them for you. So here's what I'm left with. I'm left with a big pile of squared scraps that I can store in that bin for everybody to use to test how their threading is on their machine. I have my big long strip, that was the end. This has the selvage and the fold still intact. And then I've got my pile of trash. You'll just throw those pieces away. See, they're small. They're little small pieces that are not that usable for many projects. So make sure to take care of that, please. All right, so our next step is to add our dart markings onto the fabric. Remember when we cut our pattern out, we had our fabric laying right sides together, so that means the outside here is our wrong side, which is what we want. What I'm gonna do is I'm just going to pull out those corner pins up here, and I'm just gonna fold my pattern piece down slightly. And then I'm going to take my tracing paper, or my carbon paper. Now this is not specific for garment construction. I don't have any of that on hand right now, I'm out. But this is gonna transfer the markings to the fabric. If you were doing this for a regular project, something that's gonna be wearable, these are just a muslin, they're just for fit and for practice basically. So we don't need to worry about it. But if you're doing a wearable garment, you're gonna wanna make sure that your transfer paper is some sort of fabric safe and that will wash out. So, and there's several ways of doing dart markings, but this is the way I'm gonna show you. So we have the black bold side, that's the side that transfers. I'm going to lay it down on top of the fabric, and I'm going to fold it over so it reaches the back side. That way, when we do our transfer, it's going to transfer to both the front and the back, okay? I'm gonna lay my pattern piece down. Then I also have a piece of cardboard. If you're in my class, these are back underneath our storage trays. And so we want those to protect the tabletop. So it's just gonna lay underneath our pattern piece, protecting the table. Okay, so I'm gonna put my pattern piece back down, just pin it slightly. This really doesn't matter because we've already cut it. But then what I do is I take my tracing wheel. So this is a tracing wheel. They have serrated ones like this that has little jagged edges, and they also sell ones that are a little bit smoother that you would use for more delicate fabrics. So for this particular one, I am going to line my tracing wheel up with the dart line, and I'm just going to roll it down. So by rolling it down, I am applying pressure to that carbon paper, and it is going to leave those markings on the fabric. Okay, when I get to the corner, I just kind of push down in there. Now I'm ready to do my other side, okay? And if you have trouble staying on the line, you could always lay a ruler right down next to it and keep the ruler in line with your tracing wheel. So then I can take my pins out here just to check my work. And you're gonna repeat this same process on piece 2, but I'm gonna fold this back. I'm going to lift up my carbon paper. And as you can see, there are these little dotted lines in the carbon paper now, and there are little polka dots right here. That is gonna, and it kind of swerved in a little bit, but it's gonna show me where I need to construct my dart later on. So we'll use those markings later. If we look to the back side, we also have the markings back there because I wrapped that carbon paper around the top, okay? So you will do that for pieces 1 and pieces 2 only, and you can repeat the use on that carbon paper. It can be used over and over again. Another step we're going to do really quick is make a few other markings on our skirt. We had already marked for the darts, and now we're going to mark for the waistline. There's a little circle on your pattern piece. You're just gonna poke your pin through all the way, and then you are going to take your fabric marker, and you're going to kind of lift up the pattern piece, and you're just gonna mark right there at the pin, and then you're gonna mark on the wrong side. Again, where the pin is, you're just gonna put a little dot. So those pieces have been marked. I'm gonna do the same thing down here. This will be where my zipper lines up. So again, I'm gonna put that pin all the way through, lift up my pattern piece slightly, and where the pin intersects in the fabric, that's where I put my little dot. So anytime you see those little markings, they are helpful to go ahead and add when you're laying everything out, rather than when you get to that step in the project, having to go back, find your pattern pieces, and figure out where exactly to put those little dots and things. So get the pattern pieces all marked up. The instructor will check this one last time to make sure everything is labeled, make sure all your markings are there, and then we will finally be able to take our pattern pieces and remove them from the fabric. The final step in prepping our pattern pieces before we get started with sewing is we need to label them. Since we're using a muslin that has no right or wrong side, we need to identify which side is wrong side or right side. I would recommend always doing this if you are using a woven fabric that has no print on it, that looks the same on front and back, because sometimes the pattern pieces are different, and if you get them flipped around, it can impact how you are constructing. So what you will do is you will just lift up. So this is my back piece. Back piece has 2 separate pieces. I'm just gonna lift up the corner here, and I'm gonna go ahead and place my tape on here. That's on the wrong side of the fabric. Remember, we have right sides together, so on the wrong side of the fabric, I have my tape. So out here, I would need to label another one with wrong side. If you just want to do one that says WS, we will know what that means. So wrong side, okay? So on all of your pieces, you will need that piece of tape labeled either wrong side or WS for wrong side. And I think all together you'll need 6 pieces total. Okay, so some of your pattern pieces, there would be 2 separate pieces. Each separate piece will be labeled on the wrong side of the fabric. Please take care of that before removing your pin so you can always remember where the wrong side is versus where the right side is.